So I felt like this morning I gave a talk and it was a little bit dry in operations on how to run centers and different. So I would like to spice it up a little bit, and I would like to invite one of your professors who does amazing service learning with GIS. And so he also has to leave early, so he's going to get started giving you some examples, and some of those examples you're seeing in the map gallery through the students' entries in the poster competition. And then after that, I will show you other examples that we did.
All right, thanks. I'm Adam Berlin, Department of Geography. When I came to Ball State, I inherited Kevin Turcotte's GIS design class, where we do immersive, community-based, or projects that are based in other parts of campus. So we have opportunities for students to work with real-world GIS problems and to hopefully provide some help and service for organizations that otherwise might not be able to have those services performed. So a few examples, just from last year, had a few students who have filtered out, so I can't embarrass them too much. But, we had students working with Hendricks County Emergency Management Agency, basically assessing several things having to do with emergency management within the county. This is just west of Indianapolis. So they've seen a lot of population growth, and their storm sirens have been in the same places for a while, and so they wanted to make sure that their storm sirens serve the population and people can actually hear when a siren goes off. So the students did a really good job of working with the county to try to suggest some new locations that might better serve residences, meeting places. That project actually won a state award from the Indiana Emergency Response Commission, so we were pretty excited about that, and that might lead to future emergency response type projects because it's so successful. We also had students working with Second Harvest Food Bank here in north of town, and we have our cartography classes have picked up some of the slack and are trying to make good cartographic projects that Second Harvest can take to community leaders, potential donors, and say, hey, look, here's what the actual poverty status is within our communities. Here's where we distribute food. Here's where we could be doing a better job. So I think that they looked into having some GIS work done with a consulting firm a few years ago, and it was going to be something like $40,000 or $50,000 for the kind of work that our classes have been able to do for them for free. And this, for the students, that's a really good opportunity to share something with a prospective employer. Look, I helped to make a difference with hunger in our community, so that's been a really positive relationship that we have ongoing with those folks. And then on campus last year, we did work with the Alumni Engagement Office and with John Taylor in the field station. John was here during lunch, and I don't think he's here any longer. But we've been helping we've helped the Alumni Association reach out to their chapters, local chapters in Fort Wayne, Chicago, Muncie, Indianapolis, but also to reach out to Greek alumni, the Black Alumni Constituency Society, and give those organizations a little bit better feel for where they should be holding events, who they should be marketing to, which colleges did their alum really come from, because a lot of that's anecdotal, and now we're giving them some real numbers to work with. Dr. Turcotte and I have actually sort of picked up where the students left off on that, because the response has been so positive that they want more and more information out of us. And with the field station, John Taylor's been able to take his PDAs out in the field now, collect data on where invasive species are, where they're doing prescribed burnings, things like that, and take it back to his computer and actually have the computer and the PDA talk to one another and have a nice clean data structure there. So that's just an example from last year of the types of projects that our students were involved with in the GIS capstone class. If you have ideas, if you have needs, or needs within the community, we're always looking for more projects and to place GIS interns within our junior and senior students. So with that, I will yield the stage. I know I'm not the main attraction.
No, this was great. Thank you. Yeah, so I was learning about all the projects when they were doing. I was like, that's just GIS for good and like service learning. So I'm just very excited, and I have a lot of ideas now to take back home from what you just explained. So my talk today, this afternoon, is about GIS for Good, which is a class that we started at Stanford University in 2014 in collaboration with the United Nations Human High Commissioner for Refugees, the International Rescue Committee, and also Ennead Architects is a pro bono, is an architectural company in New York that does pro bono for the UN. And so this is kind of what I think the idea came from. This is from Ban Ki-moon, who used to be the head of the UN. And so I think the UN has this innovative office when they are looking at partnering with universities, campuses, industries to bring innovation into their operations. And so although we work with the UN and specifically with the High Commissioner for Refugees, we actually work with the Innovation Office and say, how can we use research, universities' instructions, or a combination of all of them to bring back into real-world solutions. And one of probably the most challenging places I've ever seen, that is refugee camps. So to give you an idea, those refugee camps, imagine you have, I don't know, 40,000 people crossing the border in one day. You need to set up tents. And the average length of a stay for those tents for refugee camps are 19 years. So imagine I have 400,000 people, like, for example, Myanmar right now with the Rohingya. You're receiving 20,000 people every day. It's just not food, it's water, it's sanitary services, it's electricity. It's just so many things. And then you have to set those up so quickly, and then they have to last for an average of 19 years. Forget about, education for children, health, anything that you can think of is a functional city that has to be for like 20 years. And so that's where I think opportunities like GIS can truly make a difference. In the year 2014 is also the first project that you see here on the left. This was some students that did in my Fundamentals of GIS class when the Syrian refugee issue really started to take off. What we did in this case was looking at, it's just a simple suitability modeling analysis. They knew that a lot of refugees were coming over the border to Turkey. And so we had the locations of refugee camps, and it seemed like it was going to be a bad winter. So we look at distance to roads, slopes, altitude, previous weather and climate precipitation and snow to see how much at risk they were. And unfortunately, they had a very harsh winter, and a lot of them perished during that. So imagine the students doing the work in fall. So Stanford is in a semester, in a quarter system. And then this happened right after. So after that collaboration, we talked to the UN, and then we decided to do a full class with them called GIS for Good. And other partners like the International Rescue Committee. These were the students for the class. The truth is that this was the first class that was being offered at Stanford in the spring, like GIS class per se. And the idea is that the students, a lot of you will see the transformations. The students are there was one from African Studies. Most of them were earth science or systems or civil and environmental engineering. None of them had any interest or knowledge whatsoever in a refugee issue. But they knew, and they told me this. I get close to the students, like we established a very good relationship. And they told me this, I'm not interested in refugees or GIS for Good. I just need GIS and I'm graduating. Like just honest background. What it was incredible was that although they were not interested in the topic per se, they signed up for the class and they work in teams with the partners and talking, with the professor. It seems like the interest of the students when they have a partner or somebody depending on their work is not something for a grade. It just changed completely. They didn't need motivation. We didn't have exams. It was just the projects, and it was just, they went from 0 to story maps and spatial analysis in 10 weeks. And I'll show you their websites, their story maps, their analysis, their reports. Very, very good quality for 10 weeks that they had. And so one of the things that I needed to let go from teaching the fundamentals GIS class, where we have 2 hours of lectures and then labs and then we'll do a project, it was more like we had to divide it. And so half of the class will be learning about the issue that they have, and the other half will be about GIS. And so I had to be very selective, but at the same time, the GIS concepts were very much integrated. And so this is kind of what you always see with a traditional format on any GIS class. And then this is kind of what came together. We had guest speakers for most of the sessions, where we have leading authorities like a judge that is very famous and has published books. We had a lawyer that is also now in the California Supreme Court, who was a professor there and worked in several White House administrations on these issues. We had Robert Cavera. He was a refugee from Rwanda who came to the United States, and he graduated from Stanford. He was actually teaching in the business school at Stanford. And so he came to the class, supporting the class to tell his own story. So it was full circle, where we have aspects of the law and international treaties. We had people from the UN that flew from Geneva just to meet the students and help them and inspire them. And then we had a refugee itself who kind of went through the system and is actually a graduate from Stanford. And so we also look at things like reflection. Like I was mentioning this morning, GIS is a lot to assimilate, so them putting together what they learned from those topics, plus the GIS topics, and bringing them together and thinking about the progress that they were making or what they were learning. It was truly a special class that I'm trying to do the same thing at Clemson. I just haven't found the right fit. And the other thing that I kind of wanted to look is to that flipped classroom, like what is my real value? If I want to teach a buffer, a lot of times the buffer, they can find it online. There's a lot of great tutorials, but what is my value? I think my value is helping them with the projects. When you do, I don't know how many of you do flipped classrooms or service learning, the students get frustrated because the client a lot of times, and Adam can tell you more about it, they don't know GIS. They don't know exactly how they need it. And so they have these unrealistic expectations. And so they say, oh, I want this data, and I want you to visualize this and give me this and that and that. And it's literally impossible, right? And so helping them navigate and say, we need to change the expectations, you need to do, they feel like they're going to fail. And say, well, I'm not doing exactly what they wanted. And so helping them through that process, I think, is invaluable, because when they graduate, they don't have a script through the labs. They need to do exactly that. And so I think it's a great experience for them. They don't appreciate it while they go through it, but you will see some of their testimony. They really appreciate it right after they present. Right before, they're just very frustrated. And so what I thought, too, is that I don't need them to memorize vector and raster and geodatabases and all these tools. I need them to understand and promote that critical thinking. And so these are their projects that they did. So they work in groups. And some of them are, like traditional GIS. So the one in the top center is looking at a refugee camp and looking at putting our batteries or charging extensions. And we use network analysis to look at how much cost will be for each solution, how much they have to walk, walking is a problem in refugee camps, especially for women, for cooking and things like that. They have to go farther and farther. Imagine you have, 200,000 people, and they cook with wood, and so the women go farther and farther out, and then they just get exposed to, assault and things like that. And so this was a project we were working with the energy innovator of the UN to kind of look at those solutions. One thing very special, too, is that we were in Silicon Valley, and there was this company that was just started called Planet Labs. Google purchased it, and now I think it's Trimble or somebody else. Anyway, Planet Labs is famous because they were able to launch all of these satellites very cheaply. Well, at the time, Planet Labs had one satellite, and they were graduate students from Stanford. So when we talked to them, they redirect their one satellite, because they didn't have any projects, to go to that refugee camp so we could have updated aerial imagery of that refugee. And so the students started digitizing the tents, making the pads, and looking at locations. So that's how kind of especially was like everybody volunteered to help the class make a success. The UNs flew their people. I didn't have budget to invite them, unfortunately, and they just came out of their own dime to support the class. And so this one over here on the left is site selection refugee placement in Uganda. So imagine how useful can it be. We did it just for Uganda, but then the UN was interested in doing it worldwide. You have a split-second decision to say, where am I going to put a refugee camp? It's not that you have, like, look in Myanmar, right? They just go and they start setting up tents wherever they can, escaping violence. And so we needed to look at a series of layers where we're looking at being close to the border, but not too close, so they cannot be retaliation. They need to be close to water, so they can get water. It cannot be too steep, so the tents, so we can gather all that information. So if you need to make a decision, you have a tool that tells you these are the best optimal locations based on distance to cities, health services, emergency, and all those kind of things. So there's a lot of opportunities that we have for those. But some of them were non-traditional GIS, like, for example, mapping for innovation. Where do good ideas come from? They basically had a survey they asked UN employees across the world, like, ideas for innovation that they thought that could be good for improving the lives of refugees. And a lot of the employees in the UN, they are there out in the field. They have great ideas. And so they had this database. And so they wanted to look at the spatial distribution of where good ideas come from, which is the students that were assigned to that project, they felt like they got, they really didn't have a real GIS project, but it was truly innovative, and it was what the client needed. Same thing with the International Rescue Committee. They wanted to map where their offices are, where are the health offices, where are the breakout cases, and are they allocated properly? But they didn't have the same spatial analysis like some of the others did. And I think that's an opportunity, because that means with any department, with any research project, with any organization, nonprofit or for-profit, you have an opportunity. It doesn't need to be buffers and distance analysis. It can be, looking at where ideas come from, or looking at where are you deploying your offices, where the demand is, for example. And pretty much everybody needs that. And so we kind of, you can see that it's just it's a very, very intense, this is kind of the schedule that I already have by them, and you can see that always the data is the biggest issue. This is kind of one of the things that I always, I'll show you. What I think is important when I do service learning with GIS is that the clients, a lot of time, they want us to just gather data. And so my advice is, keep the interest of the students and keep the expectations right. So what I do now is just, I have a little MOU that they need to sign and say they need to give feedback or meet every 2 weeks. They also need to provide certain data, and then I kind of veto some of the projects and say the data doesn't really exist, or this is going to be impossible, or this is just a data collection project and it's not, there's no GIS. So that's kind of some of the lessons that I have from SURge. The other thing that we did that I thought was, and I learned this from experience, is transferring the projects. A lot of times when you have these classes and these projects is great, but your partner organization spend also all this time and effort guiding the students, providing the data, and things like that. So one thing that we did with the budget that I got is just we bought some tablets, and then we preloaded the data and the interactive maps, and then we shipped them to the clients, to the IRC and the UN. And so we wanted to make sure that they could continue with the project and the project doesn't die with the class itself. That's hard. It requires for them to do metadata, when was the data created, and stuff like that. But I think that is not complete, and you are going to really jeopardize your relationship with partners if the class is done and then they cannot use it, or that's all they have for. So I think ensuring that that transfer happens is good. GIS, service learning and just for good, it's very time consuming compared to a traditional class, especially the projects they have to have meetings with the partners, you need to do reflection, you have to manage all of those. And so I think it's important to make the case for administrators. Why should we reward this kind of service that we can do through instructions? It doesn't even need to be like research. It can be just through, and I think these are some of the reasons that if you look at the top 4 buzzwords or 5 buzzwords that every university has, in their, at Clemson we have the Clemson Forward 2020. You will see a lot of this topics. And then for us in this particular case, it was like GIS was kind of at the core. Then we have, issues or topics in political science that also brought the entire university together as we were working with departments. So my contacts in the UN came from the Center for International Studies in Political Science. It was not me. So I become part of something bigger, which also brings the university, brings the organization, and then and so you can apply a same schema pretty much for any of the cases that Adam was talking about, for example, right? And I think that's a very strong point. I kind of adapted this because this is kind of what I saw, like us being a bridge, and kind of GIS being in the middle of that bridge, right? We can bring departments, for example, as political science, but you can change this with something else, right? And we bridge the university to be on service of communities. It can be refugees, it can be nonprofits, it can be local organizations, local governments, cities, counties, etc. And this is kind of one of my favorite quotes that I got on my student evaluation of the course. And the reason why is because she was the only minority that I had. She was also the only one that I have from international relations from African studies. Everybody else was pretty much engineering or sciences, very technical. And she told me this. She's like, during my previous year, I never felt like I had a skill like this computer science students who are the next, Max Zuckerberg. Like, you know how it is there. Everybody's kind of like that. And so she never felt like she had a skill where she could create something applicable compared to my friends. And now through GIS and the story maps, she felt like she had that skill. And she was even telling her mom about it. Say, Mom, look what I did. And so that to me is, that's worth it more than anything else. And this is one of the examples that I was telling you about the geodesign. So you can see here we planned different scenarios. I mean, the students had to literally map each one of those dots and then run some network analysis for those and then make these calculations. So when the UN officer from energy goes there, they kind of see this, and then they make a decision on which one to prototype. And that's his name, that's Sam Perkins. And so some of them even said like they were, it was one of the best classes at Stanford that they ever had, which to me it was it was, I had a lot of tough competition there to do something like that. Some of the outcomes too is like some students had their internships with the UN, and then this is Indian architects were actually showing that prototype that we have for Uganda. They were showing it at the United Nations there. And this is just some of the feedback that I got. And so moving forward from that, I think there's other examples that I want to talk to you about that I hope I can inspire with. Not everything has to be the United Nations or worldwide, but simply partnering with local cities. We did something like Safe Routes to School, looking at working with the community to see if people could walk, parents could walk their children to school instead of having this car problem, and also helping with diabetes and obesity and a lot of other things. We also did something like bike parking, and this one was an anti-eviction mapping project. San Francisco has a lot of problems with eviction, and so this project, it was a class project. The students were actually interviewing different people, looking at, so you can think about, struggles that the community can have. And so you can think about history classes, community services, or others. I talked this morning about the mass shootings project. I'm not going to go over it again, but again, it was one of those things where I was like, what can I do? I just make maps. And I started to develop a geodatabase. When I left, it was around like 60 universities were asking for the data to use it for research. And not only in the United States, but around the world. And a lot of, we got calls from the major networks. All they wanted was to get a statement like, are there more or less? And we cannot, that's not our job. Our job is to collect the data and to present the data. But, sometimes it can be something, a topic that you're passionate about or that you care. And then, if the class allows you to pursue your own passion, GIS can really be an instrument of change for your community. This is now as Clemson. I collaborated, AAAS. Are you familiar with AAAS? Yes, you are. Science magazine. So AAAS is the American Association for the Advancement of Science. So a lot of, like the American Sociology organization, the American Association of Geography, they are all part of, or they belong to this AAAS. So AAAS has been working with the United Nations too on the right to science. And it's one of those rights that have been underlooked by the UN, and the UN is preparing a general comment next year. So they really want to promote, like, are countries promoting the right to science? And so for that, we took that as a class project. It was a 600 pages document, a Word document of text, not a single, like nothing. We convert that into Excel spreadsheet, like it would say like Brazil in 2007 said this and this and this on the right to science, da 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 da. And we had to convert that into what you see here. And so what we look, how I kind of like, we look at the perspective of, to make it fit into the GIS for public health was, do countries that tend to protect more that right to science, do they have better health outcomes? So we were looking at child mortality, and I can show you some of the examples that they have, but it was a process that I feel the students felt very empowered of having real clients like AAAS kind of helping, and they presented some of their work at the AAAS headquarters in Washington, D.C., and also at the United Nations in Geneva, which is, quite an honor for them. Other projects that we did more local was working with local hospitals, looking at where should we put where should we put a new mobile clinic, what will be the routes, and where will be the areas where we're not covering right now. And also looking at food insecurity, which you had a project back there. History, I'm bringing history because of the Digital Scholarship Lab. This is a student project that was looking at the history of Clemson. So they have a class where they actually work with clay to build the bricks, the same bricks that they had there. And so it's a beautiful story map. It has I think it has like 70 stops. And it goes from the very beginning of Clemson all the way to the 70s. And it's just truly, if I have time, I'll show you the story maps because some of them are truly incredible, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on showing one example. We're also work with, so Clemson has a research extension in Dominica, which is an island south of Puerto Rico that got hit really, really hard by Hurricane Maria. And I really need to show you this example because we had to work on the weekend to make it happen. I mean, time really matters. We didn't know if our people, our university people were alive at the time. I mean, the building was destroyed, and it was pretty crazy. So we, at the center, we just started like trying to help out the best that we could. But what was interesting is that we created this dashboard. So I'll show you just one of them for the students to be able to what happened, what was so unique about Maria is that there was no power. So it doesn't matter how many applications you put there, how much technology do you have. There's no power, nobody can post in social media. And so what the students did, and maybe I'll show you, they fill out this form. So we created this with survey 123. We did this in I created this form in less than half an hour. Of course, then we changed things like do not add information about fatalities, You know, it got very serious pretty quickly. But what the students did was listening to the radio station and then starting filling this out based on what they were hearing on the radio station. This building is down, this road is blocked, this bridge is not, and then they start filling that out. And then another thing that was very unique, it was the Prime Minister took a video. He had power. So he took a video walking through, around his residence and around the town. And so the students, by looking at the video, because they've been there, they were locating the houses and they were entering the information here based on that video. So what was very unique is for emergency management is what do you do when you don't have power? They cannot fill this out. They cannot call you. They cannot tell you anything. And so we had to look at, they advertised this at the radio station and say, if you have any way, go to this form and start filling it out. And then once it got to the radio station, then it got more. But for the first day and a half, it was our students trying to listening and try to help any way that they could. And so here you can see this is the damage map, and then we just did some, here's Dominica. And we had to put all this, because it was serious. But you can see here, for example, how I heard about this in a public source, and so that was a drop-down menu, and then they will tell you, they will add some information about it. So anyway, we had to move pretty quick. We also work with Digital Globe and other services to get imagery of before and after. And then we run a map-a-thon when we invite students to donate their time to see the before and after and start helping us map more of what happened there. And then this fall, I taught a class. The class is topics in social research, topics in social sciences. And my module was the second module of 5 weeks on data visualization. And so the program is the International Family and Community Studies. So the students, they learn story maps in 1 week, and then the focus was data visualization. But these are some of the projects that they created. So they created story maps, one on child marriage, one on LGBT rights, and the other one on Habitat for Humanity. So Clemson is big on football, in case you haven't heard. I didn't know until I got there. But Deshaun Watson, who was a famous, he was a Habitat for Humanity recipient, and so he likes to help with those. So it's, it's trying to use those powerful videos, the stories with maps, with data visualization, and analytics kind of coming together. And I think GIS is moving towards that. So just let me give you an example of, for example, this one on LGBT rights. And again, she did this in a week, but here we have, an interactive map that shows, the number of rights. And then here, this is something like Tableau, and we created a tree map of countries by number of LGBT rights. So you can see that it's pretty even. And then what I thought was interesting was, how we mix videos with the storytelling, with data analytics. And I think maybe I passed it. Yeah, I love this. This is Gapminder. I don't know if you ever heard about it. It's free. You can embed it in your story map. It has a lot of global data, historic global data, education, and so she was looking at how many populations. So if this countries, and you can here select the countries, right? So if I don't select, for example, like Saudi Arabia, is not going to be highlighted there, but I can highlight even more if I want to. It's very interactive. It allows you to highlight, for example, here I can highlight continents. And so what I thought was great is how they kind of have all this analytics with timelines, with maps coming together, and they did this in less than a week, as their project for their module, and giving different perspectives. So check it out. It's called Gapminder. It's free. This is the online version. You can also download it, but it has a lot of global data. Health, education, socioeconomic demographics, and a lot of times it has them historic. And you can see here it tells you, I love like how it tells you about data DAOs, like can you trust it or no? Can you look at the sources? And you can change those. So I thought we're moving towards that direction, which it makes even a stronger case for the service learning component, because it doesn't need to be just a map. So I just want to leave it with something like this. Like, I just thought, like, when I work with them, it seems like we have a mission to bring the university closer to our communities, and education today more than ever really has to play a role into bridge that gap. And so I would like to, this is an example that I did for an entry on sciences and art. We had a contest in science and art, and it's like, well, GIS is beautiful. And so I got some, I call it mesh of mess or something. So it was like shipping routes, and then I have airplane routes, which you cannot see. There's Florida there, and the Gulf of Mexico. I just thought it was gorgeous. I said, this is science and it's art, and I put it there, and I know you have a lot of arts here, and so I thought it would be neat. I made a cloud word of most of your majors. I just took a few out because I thought it will be a stretch. But I would like to use the rest of the time to talk to you about, in any of this, what could we do as a service learning? How could we use GIS? And I would like to brainstorm with you about that. Do you have any ideas, suggestions, nonprofits, community issues that you can think of that will be good to use GIS for?
There's one that's going on with our landscape, like urban planning department, where they call Scout Muncie.
Uh-huh.
So the urban planning kids use our collector, and they go out and they scour the streets. So they're looking for abandoned houses. They're looking for areas where there's houses where there's grass growing up. Just different things, just mapping different things about the community. But they do this in coordination with Delaware County GIS.
Right.
Because we work together, so he has an account on ArcGIS Online,
Mm-hmm.
so all the kids can have access to it, and he can kind of manage them. So, and he does a lot of projects like that. So the county does a lot of work with our urban planning kids.
Nice.
So they can do the work, but then the county gets the benefits from it.
Yeah.
And then just recently, the historic preservation class has done sort of the same thing. They're looking at historic buildings and
Mm-hmm.
here. So we do have a lot of classes that are going out in the community and using GIS.
And using GIS.
The survey 1, 2, 3
Right.
theirs, but
Yeah.
So we do have a lot of that going on
Mm-hmm.
on individual classroom levels,
Right.
but maybe not the large project level with multiple partners.
But yeah, but I think that's awesome. Can you think of anything, like just any idea, any topic that you can think of? It can be transportation, it can be conservation, it can be, abandoned houses. Yeah.
I'm in an organization that promotes early childhood literacy, and so we're working on putting different little free libraries all over Tennessee especially for students that don't have access to libraries or that their families may not be able to afford children's literature for them.
Right.
So one thing we do is we look at maps and determine what parts of Tennessee are in need of free books for children. So we try to find places that would be willing to put little free libraries there, so different churches or community centers and
Right.
things like that, and then map those out.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, and are you using GIS or just maps in general?
So we're partnered with an organization called Die5, and they work on getting children prepared for kindergarten.
Right.
So they actually have a GIS of all the different places they already have little free libraries.
Awesome.
And so we look at that
Yeah.
to determine where else to put them.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I have just a comment before I have
Yeah,
to leave because
yeah.
I have a meeting. You mentioned earlier about getting clients,
Mm-hmm.
and often these clients don't know a whole lot about GIS, and they ask for
Right.
way too much. I think what also happens very often, especially in a place like Ball State that has immersive classes,
Uh-huh.
and they have clients and they're doing free work, is they don't know a whole lot about GIS, and they really don't know what they want. They don't know what it can do for them.
Right.
And so that's part of the deal too, is for the faculty member to work with the students
Yeah.
to get them, the best things that GIS can do for them.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, and that's right on point. That's right on point. This girl, so she's doing, that took my class. She works for Habitat for Humanity, and she's going to be like a program evaluator. They never asked her for this, but they, she's just putting their offices and the number of projects, and when they open, they were they never asked for it, and they're like, what, can you do this? Really? And okay, well, let's do more, and she, she's using also Gapminder and stuff like that. And she's using the Shong story to make it more powerful. They never knew they needed or it could be useful, but once she created something, and the thing is as a class project, it's not like a research, when you have your time is very extremely valuable and you need certain outcomes, but as class projects, the students learn, their motivation is just so, it just tenfolds when they have a partner and they know somebody's going to be looking at it or using it. So I'm there with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No. That's fine. I think with story maps, we just really opened the door to I had to show this one. His video is, incredible. When he gave his first check back to the cafeteria ladies that helped him through school, and so it kind of shows that. But the one of child marriage, I'm not going to show you that. I literally tear up when she showed us because the video was so powerful. And what's interesting is with the story maps are not the most important thing, and this hurts to say, but it's true. It's the storytelling. It's just maps are an element. They can be videos or they can be photos or graphics or the data itself. And so I find myself drifting in that direction. Not everything has to be analysis. I think communication and cartography are very, very important. And you can have a lot of clients that at least at a minimum level, they need that. They might not need a buffer or an intersection analysis or a transportation analysis, but they need a story map. Everybody needs a story map. When I interviewed in 2012 for a GIS position with the county of San Luis Obispo, I told them about story maps and say, you need that to tell the public what you're doing for them, but also you needed to get input from them through the crowds. They were blown away. It's like, we could get input from the community of the projects and our planning efforts. Like, yes, you can. And I think that way of thinking was what got me the job. But it was, it was the use of story maps at that level of communication, of partnering, that was very powerful. Do you have another?
Because Muncie is so prone to poverty and focus on areas that are on the free religious funds, so that you can live on the future report, grab food, basketball time,
Right. Well, so I'm a foster parent, and I'm kind of new at being a foster parent for like a year. It's in a year. And so I found it so challenging, like which doctors will take Medicaid, where there's a foster closet where the churches donate clothes, shoes. I mean, all of a sudden I get a 3-year-old girl when I had a 5-year-old boy, and I don't have clothes, I don't have anything, right? And so there's a lot of resources. Dentists that will take them. Not every dentist can take them. And so I started just using Google Maps. I started putting, it's like, well, they were circulating this Word document that some people, but how about like knowing which one is closest, which psychiatrist is closest, which, fire station. I need to take the fire extinguisher every 6 months to be reviewed. And the fire marshal comes to my house to check. So, but I have to go 40 minutes away. So for me, having a map that tells me all my resources, they love it. And it takes me 2 minutes to update it once a month or something, to add a new dentist or a new doctor. There's so many opportunities in the community, and I think as class projects, the students, feel like empowered, useful. It helps with their career and their resume, their internship opportunities, and their formation too. Because you're doing real projects without a script, and that's what you're going to have to do when you graduate. So, yeah.
I interned for a humanitarian organization, Filter Boat, and they seek to combat the global water crisis and install water filters in families' homes in the Caribbean and developing nations there, like the Dominican and Haiti. And I can see this being really beneficial. I don't know what they use. I know they use some program to track what communities and what homes they've installed water filtration systems in.
Right.
But I can just see this being very beneficial because of the fact that there isn't, it's not like there's neighborhoods and stuff. They need something to where they can kind of pinpoint specific locations.
Right.
Which they've helped out.
I agree. I think, I'm originally from Spain, and, we have very bad fires there, similar in Northern California, things that we've never seen before, of, hurricane winds that just came over. And so, we have the hurricanes. We need to help, and, it needs to start here, because I think these events are going to happen more and more, and innovation happens in the classroom too. So, that way of thinking that you have right now, imagine you have a class or some exercise that makes you ready to work with them that way. And I think that's what we need to do as soon as possible. So. Any other? Yeah.
I have a question. It was about something you mentioned actually earlier today.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could talk about a little more. You mentioned drones.
Yeah. Oh, I have them. Yeah. So I brought the brochures at the very end. Let me bring it. So we have a drone program. Let's see if I can bring it here. So we have a set of drones that we can use for research and for instructions. And so we have a UAV. Our GIS specialist is also a pilot. And so what we have some equipment, and then we have some applications here. Here are some examples. This might take a while. It's Internet Explorer is not my friend with story maps. Chrome works better, but so we have this form here where you can request, what kind of service do you want, and so some people want to be able to fly it themselves, and so we help them with these are the regulations. You need to have a pilot license, stuff like that, or they can go with our pilot and then fly over certain area. We specialize more in geospatial, but most of the requests that we have is like, oh, we have this outdoor center. Can you take a cool aerial shot or a video for, marketing purposes? Like, that's not geospatial. And so we made a couple of exceptions, but there's a lot of potentials. We had a student that came and said, my dad has a lodging forestry company. I need to learn this to help my dad when I graduate. It's like, that's awesome. It's like, come hang with us and we'll help you. It's not that he can fly it unless he has the license, but he can learn how to process it. And one of the cool things too is that we are learning how to process those through our supercomputing. So because this is, we have faculty doing this, and what they do is they buy this second-hand powerful computers from Amazon and on eBay for $300, but they have, and then they're crunching things. See, you do that too? Yeah. Yeah, but then they have it crunching the images. I mean, for a fly, you might have, 100,000 images or something that you need to process, and they're there for 3 days, and then the computer crashes, and then they get another one. Well, we have a supercomputer, a cluster that is free. And if you don't have one here, I don't know if you have one here or not, you can use Exceed and Open Science Grid, which is free, and you just send it and it just distributes it. And so we are also using the opportunity for the drones and the LiDAR to teach them how to deal with big data, which is. Yeah, I think, let me bring it here.
I think you had a story map with 3D.
Yeah. So this is the point cloud. So basically it takes images. From the images reconstructs the 3D point cloud. And then and this is the imagery, which is, not so exciting. But even the planning department, they paid $20,000 for updated imagery with playing and all that. Well, now, we can offer something like this. And here's you can see this is the laser scan. So this is a LiDAR tripod that we had that we can set it up here. And in 3 minutes, kind of scans everybody. It's funny when it does people and faces and stuff like that. But this is LiDAR for indoors. And this is some of the derivatives. We wanted to see more than just the point cloud, like looking at terrain reconstruction and things like that. This is Folly Island. And so there we're looking at erosion in the coast. And there's other. So there's a lot of different things and applications that you can do with the drones now. But regulations are tricky. And for students, if you belong to this special club, there's an AMA club or something like that, you might be able to fly under that. If not, you need to get the pilot license. So we are navigating all of those, and we created at the university a user group. And so the center really wants to help with that because it's a huge burden on the faculty, and the police department and the safety are very worried because if one person misuses it, then everybody else cannot fly their drones, and they are expensive equipment. So we wanted for nobody making a big mistake, so the rest of us can use them and fly them. Are you interested in drones?
Kind of. I'm in the planning department, so I work with Lisa in the studio that we do neighborhood plans, and the scout months team go out and survey neighborhoods. And now I'm in the studio where we're doing comprehensive plan, like an entire county, and some of their imagery is I just see using drones for stuff like that would be bring it more to life. And we looked up kind of a student, we found out, it's for the county right north of Fort Wayne, I don't know if you know what that, but they paid, Fort Wayne, Allen County paid consultants to make a plan for like $500,000, and they hired the Noble County just above it and hired Ball State for like nothing.
Yeah.
And the plan that they did for Fort Wayne was garbage. And I just think like if it had one.
Right. And you are absolutely right. The thing is like, so this is like the 3D. This is a 3D model of campus. I mean, we can start looking at the idea with this project too, which we haven't finalized, is bringing it into virtual reality for planning scenarios. So there's one building that they want to take down. Let's say, for example, it's this building. It's way over there, right? And they're looking at two options. Do we remove it and put another one, or do we build a park there? Well, I can do this very quickly in ArcGIS Pro, which is, it keeps the GIS database. You know, the planning department has a GIS database of all the buildings and parking and all that. Well, we can build this up in 3D very quickly and then do two scenarios, bring it into virtual reality, and that's what we did over the summer. And then you can see, like the Board of Trustees, the council, whoever you have there, they can see how the neighborhood will look with the park or with the new building. And so those are things that we are really coming to, but imagine like there's a big construction here. With the drone, I can reconstruct this very quickly and then look at those planning scenarios and then bringing it into virtual reality to see how getting that like personal like neighborhood kind of style look into, okay, this is how it will look this area, you know, and it's a very powerful argument that you can have, and planning we need to get there. And I'm not saying to you, like, you need to get there. It's like, I need to get there because I'm going to be teaching and planning next semester. It's like, we need to get to this point that the students are able to do those. So we will be doing 1 or 2 sessions on, dealing with drones and the imagery and reconstructing, because I think it could be very powerful. I don't know if we will do virtual reality, but we will try to get there.
Well, looks like we are getting close to time. So thank you, everyone, for coming. Do you want to?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.